The Kingdom of Urartu. But before we get too deep into the video, first I want to tell you guys about my social media platforms. So I have a Clubhouse account and we can actually talk to one another on it. I also host Clubhouse rooms every now and then where I might talk about history and genetics of the Middle East and Africa. I have a Twitter page, a Facebook account, and a Facebook page, as well as a Instagram, all titled The Hebrew of Israel. And what I typically do on these platforms is post upcoming videos as well as slides for my presentations. And so just be on the lookout for all of that on my social media platforms. And if you want to support me financially for the channel, you can look at my Patreon as well as my PayPal and my GoFundMe. And with all of that out of the way, let's begin with the video. We've mentioned in the past about the Urartians and the kingdom of Urartu, specifically in the Urartian video and in the Hurrians video, so we're not going to be too long on them since we kind of got a good bit of an understanding. But we're still going to dive in specifically for this video alone, dealing with the Urartians. So, who are the Urartians? Kingdom of Urartu. Urartu, the Iron Age kingdom, also known by the modern rendition of its endonym, the Kingdom of Van, centered around Lake Van in the historic Armenian highlands. The kingdom rose to power in the mid-9th century BC, but went into gradual decline and was eventually conquered by the Iranian Medes in the early 6th century BC. Since its rediscovery in the 19th century, Urartu, which is commonly believed to have been at least partially Armenian-speaking, has played a significant role in Armenian nationalism. Assyrian inscriptions of Shalmaneser I, 1274 BC, first mention Urartu as one of the states of Naniri, a loose confederation of small kingdoms and tribal states in the Armenian highlands in the 13th to 11th centuries BC, which he conquered. Urartu itself was the region around Lake Van. So here's just a map of Urartu so y'all can have a nice visualization of what we're talking about, the people, the place. And as you can see, here is Lake Van. And they said that the kingdom was situated around Lake Van. And it's not far also from the Kora Araxes rivers. Here's the Araxes River right here. And the Kora would have been right here, where the Kora Araxes culture would have been. But Urartu, of course, is a little bit more south in upper Mesopotamia in the south of the Caucasus. So just nice visualization. And here's Assyria down here. So this is from Britannia and Urartu, ancient country of Southwest Asia, centered in the mountainous range southeast of the Black Sea and southwest of the Caspian Sea. Today, the region is divided among Armenia, eastern Turkey, and northwest Iran, mentioned in Assyrian sources from the early 13th century BCE. Urartu enjoyed considerable political power in the Middle East in the 9th and 8th centuries BCE. The Urartians were succeeded in the area in the 6th century BCE by the Armenians. Urartu is an Assyrian name. The Urartians themselves called their country Belesinilim and their capital located at modern Lake Van, Tushpa. Most remains of Urartian settlements are found between the four lakes, Saradir and Van in Turkey, Urma in Iran, and Savan in Armenia, with a sparser extension westward to the Euphrates River. And again, just visualizing this for you. So here in orange is Urartu, and here is Lake Van, right here, Urartu, and here is Lake Van, the capital. And by the way, this brown will be the Hurrians. So you see that they're overlapped with one another as well. But again, our main focus is Urartu for today. So, Urartu, this is from the Metropolitan Museum, and it reads, the Urartians adapted the Assyrian cuneiform writing system, and the inscription of Saraduri I, referred to above, is written in the Assyrian language. His son, Ishpetui, circa 830 through 810 BC, and later rulers all wrote in the Urartian language, distinctly related distinctly related to the isolated non-Indo-European, non-Semitic Hurrian language. Remember, the Urartians were a non-Semitic people. They spoke a non-Semitic language. In the second half of the 7th century BC, every Urartian state known from excavations in Anatolia, Iran, and the Caucasus was destroyed, and judging from artifact evidence, closely in time to one another. The precise date of this massive organized attack and the identity of the perpetrators are still being investigated. Some scholars have suggested that the enemy was the nomadic Scythians and slash or the Medes. Basically, it may have been Iranians because Scythians are Iranians as well. Some type of Iranian people probably destroyed Urartu. So again, here's a map of Urartu, and just to visualize for you, here's Lake Van. Got Ashur or Assyria right there. And it's just south of the Caucasus and between the Black and Caspian Seas of the upper Mesopotamia. So this is from World History Encyclopedia, Urartu Civilization. Urartu, also known as the Kingdom of Urartu or the Kingdom of Van, was a civilization which developed in the Bronze and Iron Age of ancient Armenia, eastern Turkey, and northwestern Iran from the 9th century BCE, controlling territories through military might and the construction of fortresses. The kingdom boasted a lively production in the arts, especially metalwork. Surviving only 2 centuries, the kingdom mysteriously disappeared in the 6th century BCE and was only rediscovered as a distinct and recognizable ancient culture by excavations carried out in the 19th century. Urartu sprang from a confederation of kingdoms which had developed from the 14th or 13th century BCE onwards. A recognizable and independent state known as Urartu developed from the 9th century BCE, which combined these smaller kingdoms probably in response to an external threat from Assyria. The culture prospered thanks to settlement on the extensive fertile plateau, which was well supplied by rivers. Crops included wheat, barley, mint, rye, semsi, and flax. Viticulture was also important. Wine making in the region, perhaps being the earliest elsewhere or anywhere, remains of fruit found at Urartu sites include palms, apples, cherries, quinces, and pomegranates. Animal husbandry prospered thanks to excellent mountain pastures, and sheep, goats, cattle, and horses were all bred. Mineral deposits in the area included gold, silver, copper, lead, iron, and tin. The location on the trade routes between the ancient Mediterranean and Asia and Anatolian cultures was another source of prosperity. Although protected by mountains in the north and south, defense was perpetually necessary against attackers from the east and west, eager to capitalize on the region's wealth. So here is a map of Urartu just to show you again where it's just generally at, the kingdom of Urartu. You see like Van right here, and you see some of the mountain ranges that they're talking about, such as the Tartarus Mountains, which we mentioned quite often. So this is the typical land. Here's the Caucasus Mountains, south of the Caucasus Mountains. So this kind of gives you a good idea. Anatolia right here. So the government of Urartu functioned around a centralized monarchy with a close circle of advisors and a much larger group of civil administrators who supervised temples and such construction projects as fortresses, roads, and canals. The fortress capital, Tushpa, was built on a limestone promontory on the eastern shores of Lake Van in the highlands. Tushpa would later be called Van, and perhaps had a population as high as 50,000 at its peak. The kingdom's first known monarchy was Amram, who reigned 860 through 840 BCE. Assyrian sources mention that the kingdom first rose to prominence from 830 BCE under the king Suredu I, 835 through 825 BCE, whose descendants would rule for the next 2 centuries. All Urartu kings seem to have led their armies in battle. Weapons, as indicated by those depicted at temples, included iron and bronze swords, spears, and javelins, as well as bows. Heavy shields were used, which had large central bosses decorated with images of mythical creatures, bulls, and lions. There is evidence of helmets and metal scale armor, at least worn by the elite. The chief uh, adversary was the Neo-Syrian Empire. Although there is also evidence of trade relations between the two states, given the use of chariots by the Assyrians, it would seem reasonable to suppose that their adversary also employed them, especially given the Urartians' fame for horse breeding. Urartu did enjoy some victories in the mid-8th century BCE, but the Assyrian ruler Tiglath-Pileser III, 1745 through 1727 BCE, was more aggressive than his predecessors, and he laid siege to Tushpa. Another significant conflict between the two states was during the campaign of Sargon II, 722 through 705 BCE, and 1714 BCE. Other enemies of Urartu, including the Cimmerians, Scythians, and finally the Medes. The pantheon of the Urartian religion contains a mix of unique and Hurrian gods, such as the god of storms and thunder Tesheba from the Hurrian Teshib or Teshub. In the 7th century BCE, the Urartu kingdom came to a mysterious but violent end when sometime between 640 and 590 BCE their cities were destroyed. The state was probably weakened by decades of battles with the Assyrians, and it may have been too overstretched to control its own empire. The perpetrators are not known, but the Scythians are one candidate, the Cimmerians another, and even possibly forces from within the territories administered by the Urartian kings, basically like civil war. So again, here's just a map of Urartu, and As you can see, you have the different time periods for representing different colors, but for the most part, it was situated in the lower area of the Caucasus or south of the Caucasus. It even leaked into Iran, and it was in Anatolia or Turkey, and it was a quite uh, massive kingdom when you think about it. And here's Lake Van, and here is Tushpa. So, by the way, forgive me for any mispronunciations that I might say. So, this book also details the kingdom and history of Urartu. It's called The Kingdom of Armenia, and it reads, "The kingdom of Ararat, Urartu, as known to the Assyrians, or Belia Ina, or Belina Ili, as their natives called their country, was situated at the north and southeast of Lake Van. The fusion by conquest or trade of a number of Hurrian chieftainships, see chapter 2, had preceded by the 13th century BC, a powerful kingdom which, after the 10th century BC, under a succession of vigorous kings, and extended and occupied the region between the upper Euphrates in the west and the Caspian Sea in the east, the Caucasus Mountains in the north, and the Tartarus Range in the south. So again, just giving the regions when it comes to Urartu. Here's just like Van again, and here is Mesopotamia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia. So, and this is the orange is Greater Armenia, which was basically kind of like Urartu. So the Urartians, based on their background and ethnic relations to the Hurrians, likely carried haplogroup J and looked Armenoid. So this will detail that very thing. This is from How Eurasia Was Born, only reading what's in yellow, and it reads, "The Northeast Caucasian language family seems to show clear links to ancient Eastern Anatolia, as most subclades of J1-Z1842 can be linked to the Armenian highlands in present-day Azerbaijan, precisely fitting the exact location of the core Araxes culture. Three subclades of it, J1-ZS3042, J1-ZS5658, J1-ZS2872, and J1-Y5353, are widespread among Northeast Caucasian groups, suggest Northeast Caucasian languages to have originated from the core Araxes culture, as ancient J1 subclades also seem to have been present in the ancient Levant as well. This supports the existence of the Alduin language family, linking Hurrian to Northeast Caucasian." And the Armenoid phenotype: short-headed and high-skull type with fleshy features, a flat occiput and hooked nose, often black-haired with light brown skin, common in mountain regions of Asia Minor, especially Armenia and Anatolia. And this is the exact locations that we are talking about. So that's likely what they would have looked like. So the Urartians, or Kingdom of Van in Armenia, was a Bronze Age society, and it was around the time of the Bronze Age to the Iron Age specifically, but being more or so centered around 900 BC to 600 BC, likely descended from the core Araxes culture and related to the Hurrians. They were a non-Semitic people, and they spoke a Caucasian language, being the sister language to the Hurrians, and they worshipped Hurrian gods. And genetically speaking, they likely would have carried haplogroup J because they would have descended from the core Araxes culture, and they're a sister ethnic group to the Hurrians. And phenotypically, they likely would have looked Armenoid just based on their geographical location and also them being a Caucasian people. But this is where we end with the history of the Urartians, the kingdom of Urartu. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe and share the video and click the bell. Leave a comment for any questions you might have concerning the video, and follow my social media accounts for more information. And with all of that out of the way, have a great day and shalom.